start the recording. Space enough for both of us back there now. Okay. Is this good? Good height? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Hello to everybody, online viewers. So good that you're here. It's so strange to speak in front of a microphone because I normally do it in German. So I was about to say something in German to you, but you'll probably not understand. So schön, dass ihr da seid. Wir freuen uns, dass ihr da seid. Das ist einfach super. So hi to everybody here. I'm sorry for you guys, but I guess I'll be addressing the people here. I'll see if I can do a bit of both. This is my first time to do something like this, so if I look like I don't know what I'm doing, it's because I don't. So I just want to firstly say how grateful we are to be back here. It means so much to us. We are so thankful to Barbara and Stephen for everything that they invested in us through the years. There's not enough words that I can say what the two of you mean to me without like becoming really emotional and then just ruining this whole evening by crying over and over. But just being here, being in this place, in this house, I realize how the Spirit of God keeps things eternal and timeless, because I'm in the shelter, I am in level 2 Pemimpin, I am in level 9 Pemimpin on the other side. It's so, and I think, the black things help here at the back, because it's the things that remain, and of course the faces of the wonderful people and some of the new people I got to meet today. And so these things really give it a sense of unity. But I think there's a passage that I love where Jesus speaks to his disciples and he says, "Greater love has no man known than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends." And I think maybe I'm overstating this when I say this, but I think there's few people that I would say I would lay down my life for, if I can be really honest, But I think Barbara and Stephen, you guys count as some of those people, and not just you, but your kids. I grew up with Tony and Michael, and I was just reflecting on this the other day that it was after a visit from Tony, after he had been in Japan for a year after the tsunami, that he laid hands on the whole congregation, and it was after that moment that I went out in the Spirit and I saw a vision of me going to a certain place. And I knew that that place was symbolic for a person. And I went to this place, and there was a lot of Indian-looking gods. There was, a half elephant, half man. And I had a hammer in my hand, and I was smashing it. It was a bit of a violent vision, but hey, you can't pick and choose. And the following weeks, I sat down with Pravina for the first few times, and we considered the idea of starting a relationship together. And of course, Pravina has a Hindu background, and I'm not just trying to claim the fact that I released that Hindu-ness out of her. It's not like she was some kind of, every day go to the temple, kind of person. But I really believe that it was something that steered me in that direction. And I remember so many times with Michael just being here. You're, for those who don't know who Michael is, Stephen's second son. I guess most people here know. I'm pretty sure you talk about them all the time. But just, being silly and funny together, and just being in contact even now that he's in Japan, sharing our struggles. We're still connected, and I love that. And I don't know what's in plan in store for Sarah Jane. I'm sure you guys have ideas and visions, but I have this feeling in my heart that she is going to be somebody that's going to open the door of the gospel to people. I've often had dreams of visions, even of Sarah Jane just opening doors, big, massive doors to the gospel, and I have a feeling that that's something that's going to be on her life. These days, there's so many different ways to share the gospel. It's so crazy. I can't even, there's the old school way that still works, where people go and they speak to people on the street. There's relationship, there's all kinds of things, but as we were building some of the evangelical work in Munich, we had people that had these ideas that were so genius. And I remember this one kid, he was so introverted, so scared to speak to other people. And he somehow was, however, very comfortable in front of a camera. And so he started recording videos about Christianity, like, what does the Bible say about tattoos? What does the Bible say about drinking? These kind of things. And eventually he started getting comments from teenagers who were interested in wondering like what he was talking about. And he started connecting to these teenagers, and he developed a portal online through something called Discord, which is like an online portal, online channel for people to discuss different things, like a forum. And on Discord, he started discipling people. And within a year, he had 25 different disciples that he had made just through this online platform. Now, I could have never thought of that in my wildest dreams, but he did, and it was just so awesome. So there's so many different things, and I just want to say, yeah, it's just a blessing to be here. So thank you. And I honestly, I cry in front of God's presence often because I have a lot of things that I need to bring to God. I was going to say I have a lot of issues, but that doesn't sound right. But I have a lot of things that I bring to God, and a lot of things that I need God to heal in my life. So in those moments, I feel so much of His healing come on me, and I really cry. And I can't remember, though, the last time that I really laughed in the Spirit. And that moment for me where I just was able to laugh in God's presence was so precious for me. And I'll remember that. It just stays with me. And so thank you so much for this opportunity to share. And honestly, every single time that I've had an opportunity to share, I have stayed up nights and worked on a message and points, and then I changed it, and then I had titles and I had things. And this time, maybe it's maturity, maybe it's just the idea that you realize how little, over the years, how little power you really have if you don't rely and trust in God's Spirit. But I really just said, Holy Spirit, I just want you to speak what you want to speak. So I have a message. I have some kind of a plan, but I have no idea what's going to be said tonight. Now, I'm in control of the mouthpiece. So my only job and responsibility for tonight that I want is to be able to say what I feel God wants to say. I'm going to share a little bit about Germany. I'm going to share a little bit about the work that we do. I don't have any visual material, so in case you're looking up there, this is all you got. So I'm going to try and be as expressive as I can without being too jarring for you guys over there. But I want to start with this idea that everything that we see that you guys did for us, and that you poured into every single person that is in this room, was not easy. And I know that because we've been able to become closer and become friends, and it's never easy. Following God's plan is just never easy. It's light. His burden is light. We know that. But the way is never easy. It's never straightforward, and it's 9 out of 10 not what you expect. And usually if you try to predict it, if you try to put it in some kind of a pattern that you're going to try and understand that makes sense to your head, you're going to end up disappointed. And we faced a lot of disappointments because at the beginning, when you're young and naive, you're all out for God, you're burning, you say, let's go, we're going to change the world, it's going to be this amazing thing. And then you realize it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be. We moved 1 month after we got married, and we went to Cambodia on missions. We were so on fire. I mean, we had met a year before. We had spent a year together. We had planned to get married potentially in 2-3 years, but God spoke something different. And so within a month of coming back from the last part of the program, which we both did here, we felt now is the time, and we got to get married now, and it's got to be quick. And so we did it. We got married somehow in a month, which anybody who's married here knows is insane, because you got to book a venue, get the caterer, get everybody, get the list. And of course, everybody was offended because they couldn't make it or whatever. I have a cousin that I'm pretty sure still bears a grudge on me till this day because he wasn't able to fly over. So we did all this really quickly, and then we went on this mission trip, and we were there, and we were super on fire, super excited, and then we got pregnant, and so we were like, this is great, this is God confirming things, and then we were living with somebody, but we found our own apartment really fast, so we're like, this is great, and then things started to change slowly, and we had our first miscarriage, which was very traumatic. It put a stop to all the joy that we'd had up until this point, and it really caused us to reflect and step back and reconsider. And a miscarriage, it wasn't normal. You know, people have miscarriages when they're trying to have babies, but we had to go to a hospital. We had to get operated, and we had to carry Pravina on a tuk-tuk, you know, for 30 minutes through Phnom Penh, which, you know, is not a pleasant thing to do. And then we got there, and we were still preaching. Pravina was still preaching to every single doctor, every single anesthesiologist that was laying on her. She said, do you know, I just need to know, do you know who God is? Before you touch me, I need you to know this. And so she was still sharing. We were still in that heat, and we thought, okay, well, God's going to do a miracle. It's going to come back. And it didn't. And it didn't happen the way that we thought it would. And I don't know if you can relate to this. You got a plan. You submit your plan to the chief architect, and you say, hey, so what do you think? And he goes, yeah, that's a good plan. And then you go there and you want to build the thing, and it just comes out looking so much different. And honestly, there's so many parts of it that are wonderfully beautiful. Like, I made the deepest relationships that I can ever think about on missions, doing the things that God asked me to do. I have a friend who is so close to me. His name is Donald. And me and Donald have not seen each other since I did the program 10 years ago? No, more than that. 11, Valerie, when did we do the program? 2012. So that's 12 years ago. So I haven't seen him since 12 years, and we are so close. We just talk online. We just, whenever we can, we send things about our families and stuff. This is a man who has fought cancer twice. He's fighting cancer for a second time now, and he's got the most miraculous stories because he believes that God's going to come through in the end. But I look at his life, and I know the truth because I'm his friend. It's not easy. It's not easy. And so many people can look at a big ministry or a big thing and a big work, and you can think, man, that looks awesome. You know, that looks like, but if you go back and you visit all the steps they went through to get there, you realize, wow, that's crazy. How did that work, you know? And one of my favorite passages of scripture of all time is in Romans chapter 5. You know, and it says very easily, and not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into us, into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Now I love this passage, and there's so much you can say about this passage, but that first part, is such a prevalent part, this suffering part. It's part of all of our journeys. You know, it's part of Jesus' journey. It's part of Paul's journey. And it's something that we have to make our peace with, and it's part of it all. But the great thing is it doesn't end there, you know? And I love that about Scripture. It doesn't just end there. And so I want to talk to you about what I think are the elements of revival. I mean, I called it stages. Hopefully we can change that later. I think elements sounds good. Elements of revival, you know? Because we have been in Germany now for 7 years, and I've seen things change. I've seen things go from one way and completely into another way. When we first moved there, we were actually very unsure what the plan was. So we contacted a bunch of churches, and there was a pastor who spoke to us, and he said, well, I am starting a church and I need help. And we stayed in this man's basement, and we were there kind of not really sure what we were going to do. And he gave us over the whole church. He gave us control of the messages, and he gave us control of the food later. It was everything in one. And as we were there with this man, things started to become a little bit difficult. There was conflict. Eventually, he kicked us completely out of his church, and he said we were creating issues in his marriage. He basically kicked us out on the street. And we found somebody that was in the same church who was able to house us for a while. But we decided, okay, well, that's not going to stop here. There's still something to do. And God still had this thing, this calling in our lives. And so we went from one place to another. We were asking so many people, and you know, we were saying, we are here, we want to serve you, we don't expect anything back. Just can we serve with you full time? And church after church after church rejected us, which is the strangest thing. Somebody comes and says, I'm a free worker to be here in your house? And they all said no. And I just couldn't understand it until we met ICF, which is the church that we're currently serving now. And we met in a room with one of the pastors, and he sat down with us. And, at that time, it wasn't the most spirit-moving church. It wasn't like here. So to have somebody sit down with us, pray with us, and then all of us in one moment felt the Spirit of God hit us. And he said, I don't know what this is, but I have a feeling that we want to do something with you. I can't promise you anything. We were looking for a visa. As any missionary in any country, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a visa. You're looking for something that allows you to stay there, whatever it is. And we were ready to do anything. We looked at every university, every course. I even told the people at the little office there, I said, look, I can be a farmer. I can go, I can farm. Look at me, I'm a city boy, I can't farm. But I was like, whatever, I'll farm, I'll take after cattle, I'll look after sheep, drive a tractor, whatever you need me to do, that doesn't matter. Just, I'll do whatever it takes for me to be able to stay here. So we were really, really desperate to stay. And no matter what we did, it seemed it wasn't working our way. And I remember the deep disappointment of that. I remember sitting outside one of the last places that we looked for this visa, hearing no, and then just feeling in our hearts like, what do you want us to do here? Maybe you know this feeling. Maybe you've been in this situation where God's called you to do something and you've asked Him over and over, okay, are you sure? Okay, I'll go, I'll do it. You've got the Gideon moment, like you asked for the fleece to be wet and then dry and then wet and then dry. And He's given you all the signs. He's given you the provision, the money, the thing. And you've told everybody about the miracles. So you're like way too far into it now. Because you've told everybody, you've put the stories on Facebook and on Instagram. Everybody knows you're there, you're doing this great thing for God, but then you're there and you're like crying on the floor because it's not working out. It's not working out the way that you wanted it to work out. And I think what I've really learned throughout these years is the amount of dependency that you need on the Spirit. Because the thing is, the struggle, if you let it, can smother you. It can take out the breath from the room. It can reduce you to a pile of worry on the floor. But if you push through the struggle, if you learn endurance, then you unlock the keys to eternity. Because eternity lives in endurance. It lives in never giving up, never letting the things of life, the circumstances of life dictate what the outcome is that God has purposed in your life. Because the outcome is never going to look the way that you thought it's going to look. Let's face it, it's just never going to be that way. You have a picture in your mind, 9 out of 10, it's not going to look that way. Because once we did get the visa, because we worked for this church, this ICF church, the one we had the vision then with them, we worked for this church for 3 months without any pay, needing to pay rent, which we only found out when we got there, by the way. We didn't know this. And paying transportation and paying groceries miraculously. I have no idea how we did it. Till this day, I still don't remember exactly how, but everything got paid for. We did all this stuff, and then still, once we got there was still struggle. There were still issues. People were looking at our passport going, Singapore, is that in China? What's Singapore? I've never heard of this country. They didn't have it. They were using like old CRT computers, scrolling down a list of countries going like it's not here. Just hasn't been invented yet. Sorry, there is no way to enter this country into our login database, And I love Germany. I love Germans. If there's any Germans watching, I'm sorry, but there is a feeling of thinking in little boxes, And if it doesn't fit the little box, if it doesn't fit the framework, then it's wrong. Especially when it comes to bureaucracy. There's a lot of this, it has to be standardized, And I think Singapore, you can kind of sometimes be very German in that, I've seen this happen here very easily as well. Where you try to speak to a bureaucrat about something, and no matter how much you tell them that I don't know, I need this thing done, no, sorry. I guess there's no way, it can't be done. And you try to argue with them and you try to use logic and it just dies. Because it just doesn't, there's nothing. There's no, sorry, it has to be this way. If not, doesn't work, you know? So you're like, okay, fine. Then I'll do it the way you want me to do it, you know? So we had to do all these things. We couldn't get a bank account in Germany, you know? Like we had money coming in. I just need a place to put it. No, impossible. So we had, for the first few months, our money had to be transferred to the family that we were living with, and then they would give it to us cash. It was such a weird system, you know? And then everything is done with the post office. I still don't know why this is. It's an advanced country. It's got, you know, like we're talking BMW, Mercedes, all these companies, they're all in Germany, like high-tech stuff. But then everything gets done through the post office. And it's like, why? You know, why? You know, you need to submit your request. You submit your request online for the bank. Your reply comes per post, you know? In the post. Why? You know, and then you get this letter and it's like denied. So you waited 2 weeks for this letter and it says no. They got to apply again. And this was so frustrating. So eventually we went to the only bank that had like people, you know, because now all banks are all online. So we had people. And I spoke to a human being and I said to them, look, I have a job. I need the place to put the money. And they were like, okay. And I thought the heavens had opened, you know? So it's like little victories. You know, so that's the kind of experience you get sometimes. It's like you don't think about this stuff. You don't think about these things ever being a problem. Why should this be a problem? You know, like to have a phone number in Germany, you have to have a 20-minute video call with a person who asks you everything about your life. You know, where are you from? What is it? Can you show me your passport, the front, the back? Can you show me all the little pages? Okay, what's your name again? Where do you live? You know, all these things. And you're like, it's just a phone number, man. But it's like that. It's like that with so many things. And so these are the things you don't think about, the things that eventually like sometimes let you down and makes you question God's truth that He put into you. But, you know, I always say to Pravina that I am so thankful for the program. If you haven't done the program yet, you're missing out on the most crucial, fundamental teaching that I can ever think of. Because we have been in Germany now for these 7 years. I have met every theologian possible. Because everybody in Germany seems to think that the idea of life, the purpose of life, is to study until you can't study anymore. So we have more friends who are doctors, PhDs, than not. And it's a thing. It's really important for them. A lot of people go to Bible study. A lot of Christians go to Bible study. And I'm not talking because they're pastors. I'm just saying, like, your Sunday Christian went to Bible school. So, like, everybody goes to Bible school. It's just a thing. And so, you know, we talked to these people, and then you realize they have no real deep knowledge and understanding of spiritual truths because they've just learned it from a book. And this is all over the country. It's everywhere. It's just, people don't know this. And it's starting now. After 7 years. And I'm not going to say it's just me and Pravina, but we have been praying for this for 7 years. So the struggle, you know why the struggle is important? Because the struggle gives you something to pray about. You know? Like if you don't have struggle, there's a high chance you won't pray as much. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't have enough struggle, there's a lot of chance that you'll just be like, well, I'm good. You know? Or you just talk to God, be like, hey, thanks God, this is cool. But if you struggle, you're spending hours. You're spending worship moments. You're doing everything you can to just get into God's presence because this thing is killing you and you don't know what you're going to do, but you really need somebody with supernatural access to open and unlock the thing that you've been trying to do in your own strength for years and it's just not happening. You know this moment? So struggles are so fundamental because the struggle gives you the things to pray about. And sometimes I think God's really good at this because He will put something in your life, like a struggle in your life, so that you raise it up in prayer because He knows you. And He knows that, hey, we need to pray about this topic. What are we going to do? Well, just, why don't you frustrate Ricky? Put a lot of frustration on Ricky. Make him miserable for a while so that he'll pray and lift it up. It's like a great idea. Let's do that. And so that's what happens. You get things and you're like, oh, everything is just and you could choose. You could choose to do whatever you want in that moment. You could choose to drink yourself into a stupor if you wanted to, because honestly, sometimes that seems like a good alternative. You get to moments, where you're just like, well, Every door's closed, nothing is happening. Might as well get 24 cans of beer, which are not that expensive in Germany, by the way, and then just see what happens, But no, you realize like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this. And let's see what happens if I take all this stuff and I give it up to God in prayer. And I see this pattern happening not just for me, but also for Pravina, because Pravina is now in the worship team. It's happened, When I say it's happened because when I first met Pravina, I told her there is a spirit of worship on you, and I wasn't the only one. Stephen told her that. And a lot of other people came and told her that. But she had some scars from the past that told her, you won't ever be able to sing. And, we both went to drama school. We studied acting. We studied art. And there is some musical classes that you have to take. And in those classes, a teacher, and if there's a teacher anywhere here, you have a lot of power with your words, so just be careful. A teacher told her, I'm sorry, but I don't think that you are musically talented enough to ever pursue any kind of musical gifting. Just let it go. And so, you believe that stuff. In school, you believe that. Somebody you trust, a teacher, somebody who has been seeing you at your worst and at your best, you trust it. And so she trusted it, she took it, and she said, okay, well, that's my destiny. So when I told her, hey, there's a spirit of worship on you, she said, no, it can't be. This was told to me, so. But the great thing about Pravina, I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but the great thing about Pravina that I love so much is that she challenges things. She never lets things stay. And so when I spoke this over her, when she heard this also from God also, she said, okay, well, I'll try this out. And so we started worshiping together. We were doing worship services in Cambodia with Sylvia. We were doing worship services in Germany where we would host people and we would just worship. We did worship services here too. There was where the children's church was the last time there on the first floor or basement floor. We used to have 2-hour worship services there. And I know that Lisha came there a few times and a few other people. But it was a moment of preparation for us. We weren't seeing any kind of results. But now, 7 years later, over all this story of worship, finally there's this confirmation, that she has been asked to do worship. And I wasn't asked. So I was the one who was like playing guitar and playing the keyboard. I would be the logical person to ask. But I love that about God. He doesn't care about that. It doesn't matter. It's not about your skill set or what you went to school for or what you're good at. Like Noah built a boat. Noah's like, what's a boat? Right? Like, sorry, never seen this before. It's never rained here. Yeah, build it anyway. I'll show you how. All right, let's do it. Built this massive thing and then realized what that was. How many people are like that? How many people get put into these situations where you don't know what it is, but God's still asking you to do it? And so we were in this place and we it's been now, the 7 years of prayer, but it's been maybe longer than that we really have been cultivating the spirit of worship, both of us together. And it's really united us. It's really brought us to so many places of vision, so many places where God has poured into us, so many things that were disappointing got given up in these moments. And I feel that worship is one of the best places to lift things up to God. And it will very often happen that when Pravina has to sing on a Sunday, that week, she'll either be sick, she'll get some kind of horrible message that something in her family, maybe back here, or something has gone wrong, friendships will be strained, there'll be all kinds of things that happen just that week leading up to the Sunday. And at the beginning it was like really frustrating. You're like, God, what are you doing? Why do you make it so hard? And a lot of the people around us were like, yeah, well, that's normal, it's hard, because you're speaking things into the world. But that didn't sit right with me. Something about that wasn't, so I just had this impression that what if the reason you're going through this hard stuff right now is so that when you're up there and you're singing over, 30,000 people, because the live stream goes throughout the whole country, what if you're there and you're singing over, or how many thousand people is it? I don't know anymore. You don't know? She doesn't check. I love that. Okay, so however many thousand people are listening to this message and to this worship, all of those people there could be somebody that's fighting with something that she was fighting that week. And so when she gives it up in worship, it's like releasing it. It's like, it's like intercession. It's the power of intercession. And this is how I think of intercession. I think of intercession like, when, who was it? It wasn't Moses, but there was a battle in the Old Testament, and when they needed to, it was Joshua, I think, he needed to raise his hands up, and whenever his hands were raised, then the Israelites would win, and if he lowered his hands, then they would lose. Remember that moment? They had to put somebody to raise his hands up. I think that's intercession. Intercession is the person who raises your hands up to say, right now you can do it, but I'll raise it for you. It's declaring healing when you've already been healed, but healing over other people. There's power in that, man. There's so much power in intercession. It's crazy. And so this is what I think the struggles are for. It's to build that foundational part, to give you something, to give you a message, something to pray about. And then what it says in the passage in Romans is, right, there's struggles to build this endurance. And so after the amount of time that we've been there, right? So there's things that we battle with that are constant, that don't ever change. The spirits of the people, the problems of the people. I was in an area of church that I really was praying to God never to be in. I was here in the program on my knees begging God to please give me an apostolic ministry, because honestly, I would love the idea of planting something, going away. Planting something, going away. I thought, this is my thing. I love this. Let's do that. So I was just praying here every single day. Please, 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 please. And then when Stephen prayed for me and he blessed me with the apostolic mantle, I was like, yes, I got it. That's great. Such a good feeling. I loved that. I was so happy. And then I realized that the way that God trains apostles is he trains you in each individual gifting at different seasons of time. Stephen had told us that, but like any student, I ignored everything my teacher told me, and I just thought, well, it's going to be different for me. And of course it wasn't. And so what happened was, the first part of a lot of the things that I was doing was very prophetic. I was getting a lot of dreams, a lot of visions, right? I told you about some of them. And then came to Germany, and we were given a cafe to run. That was our first job. They said, you guys, you did some, F&B stuff over there in Cambodia, run this cafe. Now they thought again wrongly, I'm Italian originally. Okay, for those who don't know, I'm Italian originally. They thought, you're Italian, you know everything about coffee. And I was like, no, I don't. Because the thing is, I learned coffee culture on missions in Cambodia with Americans. Now, Americans drink, I don't know, like how Germans drink beer of coffee. Those were the first missionaries that I met, like 2 French presses a day. And it's like massive amounts of coffee, just liters and liters. It was only in liters, that I saw these people drink. And I just thought, well, okay, I like this. This is cool. I like this drink anyway. I could drink this throughout the day, no problem, So this was me when I came there. And they were drinking, espresso, and that's espresso tasting. And if like concentrated coffee is not your thing, having espresso tasting is just the most horrible experience. Because it's just like, it's like if you're not really into wine and you go to a wine tasting. Have you had this experience? And then people are like, can you hear the notes of the butterflies of the valley? And you're like, tastes like vinegar to me, but sure, So it was like that. It was just drinking like little cups of bitterness and oil. And I was like, this is just terrible. Who is doing this, And then there was all the different types, because you got the cappuccino, and then you got the milk cafe, and then you got the flat white, and then they're all different, and you got to have different proportions of things. And then you realize the German precision just sets on fire, like you've got to have 14 grams here and then 14 grams out. This is how it has to be. If not, it's falsch, it's wrong, So I was like, okay, so we were measuring, and actually like I put on this German accent, but the first guy who trained us was from Iraq, so he did not speak like that at all. So I just say that for just a matter of phrase. But the first guy who trained us was actually an Iraqi who became a Christian, got persecuted, got kicked out of his country, and became a barista in Munich. But he was teaching us how to make, and it was really very. In the end, you find out how precise, and you can stay there hours. If you look at baristas, you know, when they dial in an espresso, that's how it's called officially, the dial in. You spend hours. James knows this. We spoke about this a little bit. You know, it's like very precise, and like, you know, the oil's got to be perfectly right. No, it doesn't. It's a little bit too sour, and it's a little bit too much water on the express. You know, it was like this the whole time at the beginning. So this was the area that we had to run, and so we were running it. And I mean, what obvious is that when you run something like a cafe, and it's not really necessarily a restaurant, but I experienced this here also in the Soul Kitchen restaurant a little bit when I was working here, is there's a lot of people interaction, you know? Like that's pretty like you probably understand that, like it's pretty obvious. It wasn't obvious to me, so I was really happy being behind the counter, but I was constantly being pushed to be outside. To speak to people, to talk to people, to interact with people. And I realized that there's a certain part of me that enjoys it. And you know, my wife laughs now because that's pretty much all I do. Like, I love talking to people now. You know, so this is something that God has changed in me through the years, but I love talking to people now. And at the beginning it was so difficult, you know, but then I realized some of the potential of it. And I remember one time that I was overhearing a conversation between two guys, and one of them was showing his friend the x-rays that he'd just gotten from his doctor. And they told him, it's a tumor, it's inoperable, there's nothing you can do, and these scans were 2 years old, and he had not slept properly since he got the scans because of so much anxiety. And then I was there, and I was just doing my thing behind the counter, you know, just washing glasses, trying to stay out of the way. And then I felt God say, I want to heal this man. And I thought, okay. It's got one of those moments where like you either step out or you don't. And I'd never had a moment like this before. And I've always asked God to show me healing. So I went and I did it. I prayed for the man. And I said, I really feel like God wants to heal you. And then he started speaking. He said, well, I think God's too busy for me. He doesn't have time for me. And I said, why would you say that? And he opened up his whole story. And I was just listening to this man's story for like a good 45 minutes. Everything that happened in his life that showed him, that indicated to him that there's absolutely no reason why God would be interested in somebody as small and as little as him. And then I found out that he was harboring this hurt so deep inside of him that it started to affect his belief system. And I said, let me tell you something. I know that you've been hurt, but none of this stuff can compare to the level of love that God has for you. There is no place that God would ever not find you, have time for you. He loves you. I started speaking these things into him, and then I prayed for him, and then he got healed on the spot. I didn't know this. I found this out a week later because the friend, the one who got shown the scans, he came and he's like, I got to tell you something. That friend of mine, after you prayed for him, he went for the service. And then he slept for the first time in 5 years without ever needing to wake up. It's never happened. He went back to the doctor and they told him the scans are completely free. He's been healed. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. That's crazy, you know? And so my expectation was, well, this is a trajectory. You know, this is how it's going to go. That was probably the last healing that I remember performing on somebody in that kind of way, because I realized God was building something else in me. He was building this ability or this desire to speak to people, to people's problems, to have empathy. He was training the pastoral side of me, you know. And if you've been through Stephen's class with the fingers, you know, where he goes through each one, and there's the one married to the church, I was like, that's not me. That's I'm the last guy. But now, that's all I care about. My biggest desire, my biggest wish for every single individual is to be planted in a church, to feel the rootedness. My biggest desire personally is to be rooted. I mean, Valerie, I don't know how many messages I've written to you saying, how can I share? How can I share more? Where can I share? What's the right platform? Is it a video? Is it a thing? I want to be connected so badly. And I want people to be connected so badly because in COVID, I saw something that was so scary. I saw the possibility of people just breaking because they had no relationship. I saw what happens to people who are not connected. They just fizzle away, break away. They die. You know, Jesus says, remain in me. Well, the things that he's doing, it's the church. That's what that means. Remain in me. Say, stay in church. Don't stop going. I hear people all the time. They're like, yeah, we're not really going to church anymore. It's like, no, it's just, I don't care if your church is super boring. Just keep going. Just keep going. God will show you something. Pray for a cooler church or become cooler people in your church, whatever. But don't stop going. Don't ever stop going. Because it's the biggest gift to humanity. So many people forget that Jesus didn't just die for your sins to set you free. He set you free so you could go to church to worship. And I love this, you know. God says to Moses, he says, hey, go set the Israelites free. That's not the end of the message. It's so that they can worship me in the wilderness. You're not set free to be free. You're set free to worship. You're set free to go somewhere and worship God and serve God somewhere else. That's the whole purpose of it. You know, there's a mission, there's a calling to this freedom. And maybe I'm getting too passionate about this, but my problem is I know too many people who have been saved and they're fine to stay exactly where they are. They're fine to have gotten their calling and to be and to call themselves prophet, thing, whatever, evangelist, I don't know. But then that's it. And that is a dead fruit. You know, and that tastes bad in God's mouth. You know? Like if you've ever bitten into a rotten apple and you didn't know it was rotten before, you know, it just kind of had a weird color, you know. I kind of like that at home. Like I'll pick up something, it's like, this is still fine, you know, and then I'll eat it and be like, oh, this is terrible, you know. Bravina will spot it miles away and say, like, you got to throw that away. But I'm not like that, you know. So it's like that. It's like you've got to be connected. It's so important to stay connected. And why am I telling you all this? It's because the thing that frustrated you at the beginning, because you pushed through it, because you endured through it, you got something eternal out of it. And now I received this pastoral calling, and I was very, very, very much against it for the longest time, and I had to fight it. I fought with my boss. My boss kept saying, yeah, you got a pastoral anointing. I was like, no, I don't. You have a pastoral anointing. Go away. You know, like he does, but that's a whole different point. You know, like I just didn't want it. But then I realized, like, this is part of what God's called me to do here. I need to accept it. I need to hold on to it. And so this is part of what I do now. Now I lead something called pastoral care, and that's all I do. I meet people from Monday to Thursday, and I listen to them speak about their problems for hours on end. You know, and I celebrate the smallest victory. You know, I've got a guy that I've been meeting for 3 years. When I first met him, he wanted to look for something on his laptop. And you know, in Google, if you start typing something, it'll automatically fill it up with your most recent things that you search for. Yeah. So his was, why can't I finally die? That was his last search. And I swear in that moment, my heart died for this man. And so I sat with him for hours. I can't tell you, I think I met him once a week, 3 hours every week for a year and a half. And he didn't want to do any kind of discipleship. He was too scared. So he said, is it okay if we do a trauma course, which I got for free, that can we do it together? And I was like, well, how long is this going to take? He's like, it's going to take a year. I was like, all right, let's do this. And so I sat down with him and we did this trauma course together. And we looked at all these things. And I mean, I learned so much. I was like, I got traumas. You know, like I never expected to learn this. I expected this to be like, hey, I'm here for you, buddy. And I was like, damn, this girl, she's saying some really important things. I wrote it down. I was like, I got traumas, man. I didn't know that. Oh, yes, that was not good in my childhood. You know, these kind of things, you start realizing God will use anything. You know, God will use your journey. You know, that's so awesome about God. God doesn't care about the destination because in the journey He's got so many little things for you. You know, so this is part of the gifting of enduring. When you endure, you reach eternity. Really, the number of people that tell me like, I want to see God, I want to hear God, endure and you will. You know, and it's something Stephen used to tell us all the time. If you pursue it, you will see it. You know, and this is exactly what's been happening. It's really been little bit by little bit. And some of me is just realizing some of these things right now as I'm telling you. By the way, this is not all like scripted. And then, you know, the last part of that verse that I love. You know, and I promise I'll try to keep this brief. I can't be too can't promise too much, but I'll do my best. Is the final product of this suffering, endurance, perseverance, and so is hope. Now, when I used to read this passage before, I used to get angry at that point because I was like, hope, that's the final product. I persevered, I suffered, I bled, and everything so that I can have hope. Like it's not even an assurance; it's like a hope. Like, you know, like, well, let's hope it goes well. You know, like, what? No, this sounds horrible. Like, this is what I'm working for? This is terrible. You know, so I was really, like, frustrated by this thing until I realized what hope is and what hope does and how hope works. And so many people are in this world without hope. And I think this is the power of listening to people's stories is you realize how many people have absolutely no hope. And I mean by hope, I just mean like even vision for the future. Ideas, you know, things that they can hold on to because hope is life, you know? Like why are we here doing this? If it really was all finished on the cross and it's done, why are you and I here? It's done what? You know, that's my Singaporeanness coming out. It's done what? Finish what? Why waiting? Wait for what? You know, like this. Okay, that was enough. But, you know, why am I waiting? You know, no, I can't get rid of it. But, you know, what are we waiting for? Why, if it's all done, then what is this for? Yeah, well, there's a hope for a second coming, isn't there? That's why you get up every morning. That's why you do this. That's why you speak to as many people as you can. That's why you pursue your calling, because there's hope for that second coming. There's hope that more people will come to know God. There's hope for the church. There's hope that more people will go away from the crazy demonic ideas that are being what's the right word? Perpetrated? Given into the world, you know. There's hope. Hope is the only thing that can do that. You know, and it's not just a hope, you know. It says in there that it's hope because His love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. Man. So where you get that hope from? It's from that love that He poured into you from the Holy Spirit. And let me tell you something. If we are all believing Christians and we carry this hope, that hope becomes your identity, which means love. That love that's been poured into you, that is your identity. That's the thing that marks you so differently from every other person in the world. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't have anybody that is looking at you to reach any certain result, because that love that God has poured out for you, that is already reached. That's already there. That's constantly there for you. You don't need, you know, I as an actor, because I studied acting in school, one of my biggest problems was I'm constantly looking for people's approval all the time. You know, this is one of my biggest flesh issues. I just want everybody to be happy with what I do all the time. I come here, I preach this message to you. I want you all to be going out of here going like, man, that message changed my life. So my flesh is constantly at that level. It just wants to be looked at. It just wants to be praised. It just wants to be loved. It just wants to be cared for. And I realized this because I realized how much of me was hanging on somebody else's opinion. How much of me was hanging on to what other people thought about me. Instead of realizing that the real power is understanding the identity that He put in me. Because He validates me. He tells me who I am. So, you know, there's kids here, so I can't say it. So, everybody else. You know what I mean? Whatever. Let them say what they need to say. He loves me. He cares for me. He has a plan for me. Jeremiah, I'm too young. Don't say you're too young. You got this. You can do this. I'm a stutterer. I'll give you somebody at your side. You can do it. I've never done this before. I'll help you. I'll show you how. This is God constantly reaffirming to people in the way that a father can. And I know this now because I have kids. So I know what this does. I know that when I was teaching my kids to ride a bike, it was possibly the most frustrating 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks of my life, or longer. I can't really quite remember. I think my brain has blocked some of it out. Because it's like you get them on and you speak all these things into them and they constantly come back at you with how they can't do it. I can't do it, it's too fast, it's too hard, I fall down, I hurt myself. And you got to encourage them and say, you got to stand up, you can do it, you're great, you're fast. You encourage them every single step of the way, constantly telling them that they got this, and then eventually, you go see your friend, who's also a dad, and he also has kids, and then he holds your kids for like a quarter of a second, and then he holds them and he just tells them like one simple thing like, pedal and don't stop pedaling. And then they do it. And you're like, yes, they did it. And then when your son comes back to you, he goes, he helped me. He did it. It's thanks to him that I can ride a bike. And you're like, come on, man. Come on, man. Are you for real? And till this day, my son will just tell me that my friend Silas, he's the one who taught my kids how to ride a bike. He's just convinced that's who taught me, So it's this incredibly frustrating thing. But I know that this is how it is with God too. That's how he does it with you. When you're riding your, bike of whatever mission you're on, that's how it is. It's just constantly encouraging, pulling you. Because he isn't interested in your identity more than your outcome. He has no interest in what are you gonna present to God to go like, look, I did this amazing thing. Isn't it great? Aren't you impressed by what I showed you? And he's like, no, I'm not. Because I could do this myself, yeah? But he's interested in your heart, in your development, in your character, in your identity, in the person who you are now against the person who you were 10 years ago. That's what God is all about. And so this identity becomes so important. And the last thing that I think is so intense about all this is that at the end of it, at the end of this whole process, at the end of the suffering, the perseverance, you endured, you grew, you became a new person, God poured something new into you, there actually is something that breaks out. It's just not yours. It doesn't belong to you. And I don't know if you realize the power that is in this room, that is in this place right now, because you speak songs about the nations. You speak songs about empowering the nations, and there's revivals that are breaking out everywhere. And this is why this is the elements of revival, because revival goes through the same stages that you do. It goes through suffering, because nobody wants it at the beginning. And the devil will try to frustrate your efforts at every turn. So the one thing that doesn't want to happen is that. So you will have to suffer so that you can raise up the things that need to be prayed for, that need to be brought on God's altar, that need to be burned, so that through that an endurance is habitual, which means you're creating habit. If you're creating habit, you're creating culture. You're creating a culture that is starting from that suffering to say, when I suffer with this thing, I'm not going to let it die, but I'm going to bring it up to God. You're creating worship culture, prayer culture. You're creating Bible reading culture. You're doing all these things over and over again. That culture eventually is going to start breeding identities throughout your place, wherever you are, whether it's in Singapore, whether it's in Bali, whether it's in Indonesia, in Cambodia, in Mexico, doesn't matter where it is, it's breeding a whole new culture of people who think differently. Identities are new. Identities are transformed. People are transformed. Through that, hope starts to go through everybody, a channel of power to speak something unthinkable, to say, I declare from this moment on that every believer, every person in this country unite together to pray for one thing, that revival breaks out in this country. And we had a revival night, something really that hasn't happened in German history for a long time. But every denomination of Christian came together for a festival called Unum. We had this place that was booked out. It was in Olympia, the Olympia Hall. It was a hall that used to have sporting events. It's massive. And we were there. Bethel came over from the U.S. to do some worship. We had Bill Johnson there. And we had all these Christians together, whether they were Messianic Jews or whether they were Catholics or evangelicals, it didn't matter. First of all, there was healing throughout the board, because there's been so much of strife between them. There was healing, and then there was unity. And it was unity to pursue this one thing, revival. And everybody there was praying for revival. And I'm telling you now, it's happening. It's breaking out. It's the beginnings. And I really realize now why we're being called there. We're being called there for the same reason that we were sent, which is to renew the reality of the presence of the Holy Spirit. That's why we're there. That's the only purpose. And everything that we do goes through this lens. It goes through this lens. This is why we're here. We're renewing this. And we're speaking this into every person who has a moment and a second to hear. And if they don't hear it, the rocks cry out. Because when we in worship do it, people don't know what it is. They always say, there's something here. There's something on you. There's something you're doing. I don't know what it is. It feels all out. They don't have the words to describe it because they haven't experienced. But you here in this church, you're experiencing this every Sunday. Let me tell you, what you experience in this place is not common, is not normal. It doesn't happen everywhere. Don't think that this is something that you can just get used to because it's here. No, it's something that needs to be brought out. The message that comes on the mountain can't stay on the mountain. It's got to come down from the mountain. It's got to be brought to the people. It's got to be spread. And so it's this thing. And this is what revival is. A revival is the moment where it all breaks loose, where it all comes out. And so, if it's okay with you, I just want to do one thing, okay? When I first started this message, I thought this was going to be a message about suffering. So I'm very happy that that's not what it ended up being, because that would have been a pretty depressing message. But as I was getting ready to leave the house, that means at 5:15 today, God spoke to me and He says, I want you to speak about revival. And I believe, and I love this country. I love this country more than my own country. I gave up my nationality to become a Singaporean. I went to national service. I have bled for this country, not literally, but in my own way. And I love this country so much. When we first arrived, I was so excited that I had my red passport and I was going to pass through customs so fast. I was like, man, you don't even know. I don't even have to tap it. I'm just gonna like look at the guy and be like, ha! And he's gonna be like, yes, please come in. And they're gonna roll out a red carpet and trumpets are gonna blow. And I'm just gonna walk in like, I'm a citizen. You know, that was my idea. But we got there and a very unfriendly person asked us to move to another family line where we had to tip a little screen that said 4 people at one time go through this barricade, and then you get there and there's a camera and everybody's got to look at the camera and you have a set amount of time to look at the camera, and nobody tells you this. You've got about 4 seconds to look into this camera before and it's like a timed run, like it's like an exam, you know. I was like super scared, and then so I do it, and then I try to get my kid out of the stroller, but it's not opening right, so I get him out, I yank him out, and I put him in front of the camera, and then the camera goes, and then you're like, oh no, what happened now? And the guy came. You know, one of those people that they're like, I'm here to help you. Let me help you, sir. I'm here to help you. And they had got a tablet, and he's tapping some things, and he's like, sir, what's your name? And then he gets all my names, all my particulars, everything. He's like, oh, sorry, sir, I tipped something wrongly. You have to go to the service counter. I was like, no. But did you see it? Did you see the passport? It's a red one. No, but they sent me there with all the foreigners, with all the people that, they don't have a red passport. They were calling out people's names. They weren't even paying attention. I was super frustrated, and then we get there, we do the thing, we come out, and then because it took us so long, I looked up at the belt, where our bags are supposed to be. It's not there. The flight's just not there. So I'm like, so wait, where are our bags? You know? Oh, all the way at the end. Okay, so we go all the way at the end. There's a lady there, a little service counter. And I'm thinking, okay, no problem. You know, that was a little setback. But the lady, she's got this. She's got an iPad. She's got all the flights. She knows where every bag is. She's tagged them. She knows me by name. She'll see me from a mile away and she'll go like, ah, yes, I know exactly which bag is yours. But I get there and she's got pieces of paper, one stacked in front of another. I ask her for the flight. I tell her the flight number. She doesn't even know which one it is. She's like, oh, this one I don't know. Then she sends me to somewhere else. And then we're looking for the bags, scrambling in the airport. And then we find the bags after like 10, 15 minutes of searching. And they're just in some corner. Just put there. Like it's yesterday's trash. You know? Like just, and I take my bags and I get out of that airport. And I'm red. Okay? And by the way, one of the bags had stayed on the little conveyor belt. You know that one sad bag that just stays there and you look at it, you go like, oh, this poor soul. You know? It was like that, this little sad bag. And I had my son on some kind of a new kid thing where they can sit on it, but it's also a bag that's got wheels on it. And I was dragging him through the airport on this thing, looking for my bags, angry, you know? So I was going fast, okay? And I see the bag, the sad bag on the little wheel. I yank him. Catch him before he falls to the floor. But some lady saw him fall, and she was like, you know, like this. And I was like, bad parenting moment, you know. So I pick up my kid, and I get the bag, and then I'm super angry, and I get out of the airport, and I finish all this stuff, and then, you know, it was just super, super frustrating, super angry moment. But this was all to say that I love this country even after that. Okay? Even after that, I still love this country. And so, what I would really love to do with you guys together is if we can all stand up together. I would really love to have a moment where we can just pray for revival to break out here in Singapore. I know that Stephen has been waiting for this moment for a long time, and I know that there's so much here